The Minnesota Timberwolves. I picked them to be the 8th seed this season. It's not going super well right now. They're currently 2-6. And the big thing with them has been their defense, which is weird because when you look at Tom Thibodeau, you expect him to turn a team into a really good defensive one overnight, and I'm sure they can turn it around. And 3 of their losses have been within 5 points, so definitely shouldn't be hitting the panic button yet. But defensively, they're like 28th in defensive rating, and that's even worse, really, because they had like a 30-point win over the Grizzlies. And before I really dive into it, I will say that offensively, Karl-Anthony Towns, Zach LaVine, as well as Andrew Wiggins have all been great. They're all averaging above 20 or very close to 20 points per game while shooting efficiently. Wiggins' threes are going in. He's stepping into them with confidence. Zach LaVine's pull-up game is really strong as a shooter on top of his athleticism. And then Towns is able to just do everything you want as a big man. We'll dive into all that a little later, but for right now, let's talk about the defense. Because there are times when they've just been messing up assignments. I mean, against the Clippers, I can't tell you how many times JJ Redick got open from just running around screens. And like, that's the first sort of step to being a good defensive team, is if JJ Redick starts running around screens, you got to be able to stop him. And maybe the guy who's initially defending him can't do it, but then you got to call for a switch, things like that. And they just haven't been able to do that as of right now. There was another moment where there was a Jamal Crawford, Maurice Spates pick and roll, and Wiggins was defending Crawford. And when Spates came over for the screen, Wiggins like kind of bear hugged him, and he was pretty committed to Spates. So in the moment, it looks like they should just switch Wiggins and I believe it was Cole Aldrich, the big man. But then they decided to, in the split second, to try to turn it back into like conventional pick and roll defense, and Wiggins tried to get back over to Crawford. And then in that one moment, it gave Crawford enough time to hit Spates with a pass inside that resulted in an easy right-handed layup. So perhaps some miscommunication on their part. This is the reason why they're one of the worst defensive teams in the league, is stuff like that. There was another time when the Clippers were in transition and Karl-Anthony Towns was ahead of Blake Griffin, but he had his back turned to him, and he was able to recover nicely to get to Griffin, but Blake still had like a bit of an angle, which is all he needed given how good he is to get past Towns and go to the rim. That sort of thing, if you're a good defensive team, you recognize that it's Blake Griffin before you're even past half court, and you know, like, okay, I got to get on him immediately, because if I give him even a sliver of space, he's going to get by me. There was another play against the Clippers where Zach LaVine was defending Jamal Crawford, and Crawford was running up to receive a handoff. He was running up from the corner to get a handoff from Brandon Bass, I believe. And Crawford just kind of used his momentum to trick Zach LaVine into thinking he was going to keep on going to the top of the key, when really what he did was he stopped on a dime, and then LaVine kind of kept on going to the point where like he wasn't really on Crawford anymore. And then Cole Aldrich, who was the big man, recognized this, and he went to close out on Crawford, who attempted a three-pointer. But he was like a step too slow on the closeout, and it resulted in a 3 for Jamal. So things like that, you know? LaVine was just a little off. Cole Aldrich was a step too slow on the closeout. Things like that will make you not the best defensive team in the NBA. I remember another play where Raymond Felton was driving inside from the top of the key, and Ricky Rubio was defending Chris Paul, who was on the opposite side of the floor. Raymond Felton does not have the vision or passing ability to kick out to the guy on the opposite side of the floor, passing over 2 guys, because it was like DeAndre and Towns were in the way of the pass or something, if he wanted to get it to CP3 in the opposite corner. So Rubio should have just provided more help to stop Raymond Felton, like around the restricted area or so. And he wasn't able to do that because, I don't know, he just didn't friggin' move. And then Felton finished inside. You get what I'm saying. They're messing up on defense. I expect this sort of thing to fix itself with Tom Thibodeau. But the fact remains that, they suck on defense at the moment. So there's the defense for you. But like I mentioned before, they have lost a few games by only a few points. And there's a lot of good things to say about these guys as well. specifically the big three, so let's dive into that. Karl-Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, and Zach LaVine have all been fantastic. Wiggins as well as Towns are averaging over 20 points a game while being efficient, and Wiggins is hitting his threes, which is huge, and LaVine's averaging 19.8 while also being efficient from everywhere. And if you talk about Towns, I mean, I was looking at the Magic highlights. There were times when he would just post up on Serge Ibaka, who's a really good defender, and Ibaka just had to foul him because there wasn't much else he could do. There was another time when there was a pick and pop with him and LaVine, and Ibaka had good position on him, but then Towns just drove by him like he's a guard. Just put an elbow into him, and then he finished at the rim. There was another moment where Towns received a handoff around like the left-hand side of the court, and he just dropped a three-pointer because he got himself a little bit of space from the big man, because like NBA bigs are not naturally just going to go out to the three-point line. Like, even if you tell yourself, alright, I'm defending Towns, I have to be ready to defend the three, when you're in the moment and Towns is getting a handoff, you have that split second of like, I'm not used to doing this, and that's all Towns needs to hit the three-pointer on you. He's also really good at just being in the right place at the right time. If Wiggins or LaVine or Rubio are driving, he's able to just find the right seam to get a pass off, and of course he finishes very well around the rim, so Towns is great. The other thing that's been interesting though is his passing, as there was a play in the Magic game where he got a rebound, and he had a full court pass that was a line drive right on the money to Shabazz Muhammad that resulted in a foul. That type of stuff can be huge for an offense if Towns is going to grab a lot of rebounds every game. Being able to have a really good outlet pass is huge, especially when you have guys like LaVine and Wiggins who can run the fast breaks so well. So Towns is awesome. So now let's get to Wiggins, who has received more criticism than Towns has for a few different reasons. One, his defense has been a bit disappointing in the NBA. He's not a bad one-on-one defender, but if you ask him to play off ball, if you ask him to help and switch, sometimes he'll blow an assignment, sometimes he'll watch the ball a little too long. His rebounding seems like it should be way higher for a guy who is athletic as he is. His playmaking has not been great, and his three-point shooting has not been great. That being said, his ability to beat guys off the dribble, play in the pick and roll, get inside, finish around the rim, run in transition, as well as post up have been very good as well. And up to this point, his three-pointers are dropping, as he's actually shooting over 50% from three. Of course, that's not going to hold up over an 82-game season, but it seems like he can be a decent outside shooter at this point. So if he can get himself to at least 35% from three and maybe more, combined with everything else he can do, that's the first step to him really taking the next step, I guess. And looking at his game against the Nuggets, it was huge because there was one play where Towns was getting double teamed on a post-up, and Towns just kicked it right out to Wiggins, and he confidently shot and made the three. So if defenses are not going to be able to double team Towns because Wiggins can hit threes, and that's awesome. There was also another time where he received a handoff around the top of the key, and then he stepped into a three-pointer with confidence, and that's huge. If you can step into a three, that shows that you're really confident in your shot, and he's probably been working on it a lot in the offseason. Besides that, I mean, he was doing his normal stuff, finishing in transition, getting inside. There was a cut play with a pass from Gorgie Dang that was really good. He had a couple of nice Euro steps. Like, those are the normal Wiggins things, but to have the outside shot is nice. He's also up to 4 rebounds a game, so that's creeping up there. I think Wiggins is making some nice progress. And then there's Zach LaVine, and the big thing with LaVine is his pull-up ability, because if he gets in the pick and roll and you give him a little bit of space, he will confidently pull up for either a mid-range or a three-pointer. He did that more than a few times against the Sacramento Kings. I think that was the majority of his baskets. And that's really good because he can obviously play off-ball because of his athleticism. He can finish above the rim, he can catch an alley-oop, but he's also a good three-point shooter, so he can play off-ball around the perimeter. But if he also has it in his hands and he can be in the pick and roll and he can attack the basket potentially, because he's damn good at finishing inside and beating his guy off the dribble, but then he also has that pull-up game. LaVine's very tough to defend. So all three of these guys are great in that sense, and that's pretty much all it is, because from an offensive standpoint, like, LaVine, Wiggins, and Towns have been great all three of them, as I talked about. And besides that, I mean, Rubio just came back from injury. We expect him to be the playmaker for them, to get more guys involved. Shabazz Muhammad's actually been pretty okay. He's putting up like 11 points per game on nice percentages. He's not taking too many threes. I wish he would take more, but he was one guy who I was kind of like, I don't know if this dude is going to last in the NBA. He's actually been pretty okay so far. He usually has the ball in his hands a lot. He drives inside, uses his strength. But he's been okay so far. Hopefully he'll actually pass the ball more. I should also mention Chris Dunn. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I don't like placing expectations on rookies, especially ones where the team is expected to win. So, 5 points, 3 assists, percentages aren't that good. He'll be fine. So it's all about the defense with these guys. Miscommunications, not reading stuff correctly, not being able to get around screens. I'm sure they'll get there. I think they have potential to be very good defensively. And also, Tom Thibodeau is a hell of a defensive coach. Just hasn't been the best start.